some general overview of the SAT Math. There's actually two sections on the SAT Math. The first is non-calculator, the second is a calculator is allowed. All of these questions a calculator is allowed for in this particular practice. The second thing you should know is that the questions are not necessarily ordered from easiest to hardest. So it's a good idea to actually go through and do all the ones you know how to do first, circle the ones that you want to come back to, and then do a second pass in which you do those ones that you circled and you wanted to spend more time on. Our first question might surprise you that it's on the SAT Math. Yes, the SAT often will ask questions like this in which you really don't have to do any calculations. You're simply asked to interpret what a particular equation or solution means. So in this case, we were given this equation right here, which represents Salim's tickets versus how much money he's making. And we're asked, what does 12 represent in the equation? Okay, now I notice that this equation is in y equals mx plus b form. So this would be the y, mx, and then the b. So since 12 is the b, that means it's the y-intercept. Well, when I talk about lines, and especially equations of lines, the y-intercept is a beginning place, it's a start. And so as I look through my options, it wouldn't be the price of one ticket because it looks like I'm multiplying the number of tickets I've got by 15. So I'd say 15 is the cost of a ticket. It might be the amount of the service fee, because notice the service fee was just one time. It's charged at the beginning and then we're done. Let's go ahead and look at the other ones though before we completely decide on this one. The total amount in dollars that Salim will pay for one ticket, probably that's the 15. The total amount in dollars that he'll pay for any number of tickets, that would be T, because that's representing the total outcome of this equation. So the answer is B. 12 represents that one-time service fee because we start at $12 and then we add on more for the cost of each ticket after that. Question number 2 might have surprised you as well. Again, this really isn't a calculation question as much of just a writing an equation question and realizing what matches up with what. So we have this gardener buying two different types of fertilizer. The first fertilizer has 60% filler materials. The second fertilizer, B, contains 40% filler materials, and they want X to be fertilizer A, Y to be fertilizer B, and we know total there was 240 pounds of filler materials. Okay, so as we set up an equation, we're thinking to ourselves, oh, okay, if there's 60% of filler materials in A, I'm going to have to basically find 60% of X, which is the number of pounds of fertilizer A. Well, to find 60% of it, that means I need to change this into a decimal. So that means I need to move the decimal place over twice. So that's going to be 0.6. And then I'm going to need to multiply that by X, which is the total number of pounds of fertilizer A. So 0.6X is going to represent the total amount of filler material in the first fertilizer. Okay, and so then I can do the same thing with Y, the number of pounds of fertilizer for B. I would just change 40% into a decimal, which is 0.4, and then I would multiply that by Y, which is going to give me the total amount of filler material for fertilizer B. So altogether, if I take these two numbers of filler materials and I add them together, that should equal the total amount of filler material, which is 240 pounds. So as I look through my answer choices, it looks like B is again our best option, because this is going to take the amount of filler material for each of these and add them together to get 240. Our third and final question in this practice looks a little bit different. The first thing you'll notice is that there's no answer choices. This is not a multiple choice question. This is a free response question. The SAT Math will have on the non-calculator and calculator portion a couple of questions that require you to actually grid in the correct answer. So you'll have to calculate the number and then put it into the grid and fill in the corresponding circles. Okay, so let's talk about how to do this one. So it says that BD is parallel to AE, so that means that these two sides here are parallel. Okay, and then it wants the length of CE, which is this whole length here. Okay, as I look at this diagram, the first thing that I notice is that I've really got two triangles here. I've got a smaller triangle in here, and then I've got the entire triangle right here. Since I have two triangles, and since these sides BD and AE are parallel, that tells me that these are actually similar triangles, which means I could set up a proportion to try and solve for CE. The only thing is I'm going to need the side that corresponds to CE, because since CE is the hypotenuse here, I really need the length of side CD here, which I don't know yet. But I do know that this is a right triangle, because since this is a right angle here and these two lines are parallel, this would have to be a right angle. And in a right triangle, I can use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of a missing side, because I know that 6 and 8 here are the two legs of my right triangle. So I'm going to write this out. So 6 squared plus 8 squared equals whatever c squared is. As I solve this, I get 36 plus 64 equals c squared. That would be 100 equals c squared. So I'm going to say that c equals 10. Okay, so now that I have the corresponding side to CE, let's actually set up a proportion. So the first thing I'm going to need for my proportion is two sides that I already know. In this case, I think that's going to be BD and AE, because as I look at those, I have a 6 and an 18. So 6 is to 18, just like 10 is going to be to side CE, which I don't know yet. Okay, remember that you solve these by cross multiplying, so 6 times x is 6x. 10 times 18 is 180. Divide both sides by 6, and that gives us x equals 30. So the length of side CE is 30. Okay, and so then in your grid-in, you would write 30 in the boxes and then fill in a 3 and a 0 underneath it.